I'm a non-binary, genderqueer person, but I was raised as a woman, and I'm a person with disability. I march with you today as a person who balances the intersectionality of these identities, and I hope to help you understand a bit of the complexity of navigating gender and disability. Unfortunately, statistics for non-binary, trans and gender diverse people with disability are basically non-existent. And this speech basically focuses on women, but anecdotally we know that we face many of the same gender-based issues. The disadvantage placed on a woman with disability is not simply the sum of ableism and sexism, it's multiplied. Women with disabilities are disproportionately excluded in public life, work, healthcare, housing, income, and so much more. We are all too often invisible because just getting to a march like this involves conquering barriers that others never even think of. That invisibility and isolation drives an epidemic of violence against women with disabilities. The statistics of violence against women with disabilities are absolutely harrowing. 52% of women with disabilities will experience workplace sexual harassment. 69% of women with disabilities in the US will experience physically aggressive sexual harassment, and our sisters here in Australia will tell us the same thing. Here, research tells us that 70% of women with disabilities have experienced sexually violent encounters, and 90% of women with intellectual disabilities will experience sexual abuse. We know that this is still probably underreported. Can you imagine a life where you are verbally abused every day, jostled at the bus stop, bullied at school, belittled at home, where the media tells you that you are something to be pitied? The more different you look or sound to others, the greater the incidence of abuse. The impact of a life of put-downs contributes to a lowering of self-esteem, eroding confidence, and prevents young girls with disabilities from finding a sense of self. Little wonder that there is a high rate of chronic depression and anxiety in addition to a primary disability. A power imbalance is created in all our interactions with able-bodied society. This power gap is increased when disability intersects with a different gender identity. And this can be exploited by those who target women with disabilities in relationships and in families and in support workers or co-workers. Little wonder that women with disabilities are 40% more likely to experience domestic violence. And this takes different forms for us because so often partners are the ones providing necessary supports. They can withhold that support as a form of abuse, making it hard for us to report and leave. This is reinforced by policy that expects partners to be primary carers and leaves women powerless to speak up. Women with disabilities also experience abuse from paid support workers in institutions and from service providers. Over the first 3 months of its operation, just 3 months, the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission received 184 reports of abuse or neglect, 29 of which were sexual assaults. And that was just within service providers from New South Wales and South Australia. This is just the tip of the iceberg in a new scheme that covers only a fraction of the population. We have been asking for a Royal Commission to shine a light on the true extent of abuse and neglect of people with disabilities for years, and stories like this just keep coming. You can call for it too. It is, after all, an election year, the perfect time to do so. So many settings, women with disabilities are targeted by abuse because we are isolated and othered by able-bodied society. Each of you, every single one of you, can enable women with disabilities to be more visible and included, helping to break the cycle of isolation and abuse. This means your personal and organisational commitment to including women with disabilities in your community. Look for opportunities to improve access and inclusion without one of us having to point it out first. Make sure your next event asks attendees about their access requirements. Ask your local politicians, I know there's some in the crowd, about their plans for inclusion. Seek out people with disabilities to work with you. There's about 20% of the population living with disability. And follow the work of local advocates like Women with Disabilities ACT, or People with Disabilities ACT, or Advocacy for Inclusion, or any number of other organisations. And learn from our perspectives. Boost our voices, even if that's just sharing a Facebook post. Stand in solidarity with us, because only if we are included in society is our isolation decreased and our safety in the community increased. Together, we are strong women with strong voices, so include us and march with us. Thank you.